This is worksheet 2.3. The directions say find the slope and the y-intercept of the line. Well, I'm very thankful that those are the two things they're asking, and that number 1 is in slope-intercept form, because the 8 is in place of the slope and the -7 is in place of the y-intercept. Notice that it is a -7. The minus sign makes the value after it negative. Number 2 is also in slope-intercept form because it has y by itself. The interesting thing is so let me backtrack, x is right there, and the number that's being multiplied with x is the slope. The number that's being added to x is the y-intercept. And in this case, they're adding 0. So the y-intercept is 0. That's where you'd start the graph if you were graphing it. Now number 3 is not in slope-intercept form. I need to have y by itself. So I'm going to subtract 2x from each side. And I'm also going to add 1. So I now get 4x equals 4y equals -2x plus 1. And then I divide by 4. I have to divide everything by 4. So my new pretty equation is y equals -1/2 x plus 1/4. And so the slope is -1/2. And the y-intercept is 1/4. Number 4, also I need to solve for y. I need to get y by itself. Y is being multiplied by 3, so I'll have to divide by 3, but first I need to undo what's being added to it. Into the y, we are adding -2x, so I need to add a positive 2x because -2x plus positive 2x is 0. So there's now a 0 over here on that side of the equation, but what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So now my equation says 3y equals, I'm going to write the x term first because that's more what like slope-intercept form looks like, but you don't have to. And now I solve for y. So I divide each term, everything on the left and everything on the right, by 3. So my new pretty equation is y equals 2/3 x plus 2. And so the slope is what's being multiplied with x, which is 2/3. And the y-intercept is what's being added to x, which is 2. Graph the equation. Well, so my slope is 4, but I actually want to write that as a fraction. Yeah, we actually sometimes want to see fractions, especially when we're graphing lines and we want our slope written as a fraction because the numerator is your rise and the denominator is your run. So I'm actually going up 4 every time I go over 1. Now the y-intercept is 3. So I'm going to plot the y-intercept at 3. Then I'm going to go up 4, right 1, up 4, right 1, and then down 4, left 1, down 4, left 1, down 4, left 1. Zing a line! Make sure you show the dots, folks. If you don't hit the dots, as long as your line is reasonably straight, and I'd call my line even reasonably straight, it's more about having the dots in the right point and trying to kind of connect them. So here, number 6, your y-intercept. I'm actually going to start at the y-intercept because that's what I plot first anyway. So when I graph lines, I focus on the y-intercept first. It's at -2. If you ask yourself what's being added to x, it's a -2 that's getting added to x. So that's where I'm starting on the y-axis. And then my slope is -3. But again, we want to write that as a fraction. -3 is equivalent to -3/1. So my rise is -3, which means I'm going down 3. And my run is +1, so I'm going to the right 1. So down 3, right 1, down 3, right 1. And then you can reverse it. Now, if you're going to reverse the rise, you got to reverse the run. So you can also go up 3, but you have to go left 1. Up 3, left 1, up 3, left 1, up 3, left 1. And then zing a line. Zing! Beautiful. Still graphing these lines. So I'm going to solve for x now. So I'm going to subtract x. And I guess if you want to do 2 steps at once, you'd add 3. So that undoes both of the things over here on the right side, or 2 of the things on the right side. But if I subtract x and add 3 on the left, I've got to do it on the right. So now I have 6y on the left side equals negative x plus 3. So now I'm dividing by 6. So y equals, I'm going to slide a 1 right here. I'll do it in red. It's the same as negative 1x, right? So y equals negative 1x over 6 plus 1/2. 3/6 is 1/2. So my y-intercept is 1/2. So that's halfway up, whoa, halfway up. And then my slope is negative 1/6, which means go down 1 and right 6. By the way, folks, you could have written this with the x off to the side. I'll show you what I mean. Like that. If there's a variable on top, it can really just get slid off separately. It means the same thing. So I'm going to go down 1, which would put me in the middle of this box, and then I go right 6. Which puts me in the middle of that box where x is 6. And then I can reverse it and go up 1, but then I have to reverse the run and go left 6. And notice how when I place this green dot, it's in line with the 2 red dots. If you ever try to reverse the slope and it doesn't make a straight line and it's a linear function, then you probably forgot to reverse either the rise or the run. Should make a straight line. And it's easier to make a straight line, or the essence of a straight line, if I have that dot to focus on, and we want to see that. All right, number 8. Let's get this in slope-intercept form. So let's solve for y. Let's add 6x and add 6x. Now when I rewrite this problem, I'm going to put the x term first. So 6x plus 18. That 18 is positive. Now I divide by 9. So I get y equals 2/3 x plus 2. So the y-intercept is 2. And the slope equals 2/3. So up 2, right 3, up 2, right 3, up 2, right 3. Reverse it, down 2, left 3. Down 2, left 3, down 2, left 3. And zing, your line. Zoop. Beautiful. Second page, second part of this concept is finding the x and y intercepts. It's another way to graph a line. Remember, for the x-intercept, your y value is 0. And for the y-intercept, your x value is 0. So let's get the y-intercept first. Let's plug in 0 for x. When x is 0, y is 6. Hey, and isn't this in slope-intercept form anyway? So didn't we kind of realize right away that the y-intercept is 6? And then, I don't know, I guess for the x-intercept, I'll do some work over here. I'm gonna put 0 in for y, and I guess solve this bad boy. Oop, that's a 6. So I'm gonna minus 6. And then I get negative 6 equals negative x, so that means that positive x equals positive 6. All right. Same thing, the x-intercept is the x value when y is 0. The y-intercept is the y value when x is 0. So honestly, right here, I know that the y-intercept is negative 4. If I take 0 times 5/3, I get 0. So when x is 0, y is negative 4 because this is gone, or worth nothing. So now let's plug in 0 for y and solve this equation to get the x-intercept. So 0 equals 5/3 x minus 4. So we add 4. So we get 4 equals 5/3 x. And now we multiply by the reciprocal to get x by itself. So I'm going to multiply 4 by 3/5, and I'm going to write 4 over 1 because multiplying fractions, we multiply straight across. So I realize that there's a 1 on the bottom, and I get 5/12. That's the x-intercept. That's what x is when y is 0. Ooh, This is not writing. Come on. 12/5. So same idea. Find the x-intercept. So that's the x value when y is 0. Now that this is in standard form, folks, this is going to be a bit easier. It's going to be a lot easier. I actually, like I was doing with the x-intercepts, I like to label what I'm working on. So I'm going to go after the x-intercept. That's when y equals 0. So copy the equation, but plug in 0 for y. And actually, folks, 2 times 0 is nothing. So there's nothing there. So I really just have 5x equals 8. And those of you who get enough practice on this, just realize that when you plug in 0 for y, it's gone. So you can just start right here and get your x-intercept. The x-intercept is 8/5. 8/5. Now for the y-intercept, I plug in 0 for x. Should do this in a different color. So now 5 times 0 plus 2y equals 8. Again, 5 times 0 is nothing. So really I have 2y equals 8. So I'm just going to divide by 2. And my y-intercept is 4. When x is 0, y is 4. So when it's in standard form, it's not as easy to see what the y-intercept is. That's a disadvantage compared to slope-intercept form. It just has the y-intercept there stated for you. But it's really quick, easy math. Let's go after the x-intercept again. So plug in 0 for y. X-intercept, y equals 0. Now I'm going to do that math. So x minus 3 times 0 equals 4. Again, this is nothing. Negative 3 times 0 is nothing. So there's nothing over there, so the x-intercept is 4. Whereas over here, for the y-intercept, we plug in 0 for x. So then we get x-intercept, y-intercept, y-intercept, the other variable, x, equals 0. So 0 minus 3y equals 4. Now here's where you got to be careful, folks. This is gone, but when you bring down this equation, make sure you acknowledge that that 3 is negative. If you have to chop slash, do it. That's a negative 3. If you don't bring a negative sign down, your answer will not be correct. Because to undo multiplying by negative 3, we divide by negative 3. So the correct answer is negative 4/3. Bring the negative sign up to the top to be polite mathematically. If you forgot all about that negative sign, you would never have had a negative sign going through, and you wouldn't have a negative there, and that's not the right answer. It's not the correct y-intercept. So negative 4/3.